My wound is geography. It is also my anchorage, my port of call. I grew up slowly beside the tides and marshes of Colleton. My arms were tawny and strong from working long days on the shrimp boat in the blazing South Carolina heat. Because I was a Wingo, I worked as soon as I could walk. I could pick a blue crab clean when I was 5. I had killed my first deer by the age of 7, and at 9 was regularly putting meat on my family's table. I was born and raised on a Carolina sea island, and I carried the sunshine of the low country inked in dark gold on my back and shoulders. As a boy, I was happy above the channels, navigating a small boat between the sandbars with their quiet nation of oysters exposed on the brown flats at the low water mark. I knew every shrimper by name, and they knew me and sounded their horns when they passed me fishing in the river. When I was 10, I killed a bald eagle for pleasure, for the singularity of the act, despite the divine, exhilarating beauty of its solitary flight over schools of whiting. It was the only thing I had ever killed that I had never seen before. After my father beat me for breaking the law and for killing the last eagle in Colleton County, he made me build a fire, dress the bird, and eat its flesh as tears rolled down my face. Then he turned me into Sheriff Benson, who locked me in a cell for over an hour. My father took the feathers and made a crude Indian headdress for me to wear to school. He believed in the expiation of sin. I wore the headdress for weeks until it began to disintegrate feather by feather. Those feathers trailed me in the hallways of the school as though I were a molting, discredited angel. "Never kill anything that's rare," my father had said. "I'm lucky I didn't kill an elephant," I replied. "You'd have had a mighty square meal if you had," he answered. The Prince of Tides was the first book to have captured me from the prologue and continued its hold on me until the last page. I didn't read it until I was in my 30s, and it was startling to me how passionate I became about this novel. I've read it at least once a year since that first time I borrowed it from my local library. I'm one of those readers who love to read multiple books by the same author, and that's the only reason I slid it off the shelf, to be honest with you. I noticed that Pat Conroy had several other books alongside it, and figured if this one was a good read, the others would be as well. That turned out to be true. Pat Conroy's style of writing is lyrical and emotionally moving to me. It's almost like poetry. I find it soothing and yet so overwhelming at once. He immerses his readers in rich detail and scenery. You're provided with an intimate view into the lives of his characters, many of whom are drawn from his own childhood memories. All of his novels have a vein of semi-autobiographical blood running through them, and The Prince of Tides is no exception. From the abusive and incredibly flawed father to the beautiful mother who can be as tough and cold as steel. As Tom, the principal character of The Prince of Tides, he writes of Lila Wingo, his mother, "I was the son of a beautiful word-struck mother. It was she who made me take notice of the perfect coinage of sand dollars, the shapes of flounders inlaid in sand like the silhouettes of ladies in cameos. She saw the world in a dazzling prism of imagination." And yet he also writes Lila Wingo would take the raw material of her daughter and shape her into a poet and a psychotic. With her son, she was gentler, and the results took longer to tally. Of his father, Tom writes of being a shrimper's son and growing up in love with the shape of boats and the smell of the salt marshes being predominant in his sleep. He describes his father as hard-working and having the smell of shrimp embedded in his skin and clothes. He wrote, "Standing beside him as a young boy, I would press my nose against my father's shirt, and he would smell like some rich, warm acre. If Henry Wingo had not been a violent man, I think he would have made a splendid father." Pat Conroy draws the reader into the story largely in part because of the characters that he's able to bring to life with his pen. Once you are engaged, you will find it difficult to withdraw from his narrative. Add in the events which shape the lives of those characters, and the plot is just as guilty of holding you hostage as the rich scenery and characters. I think one of the reasons the novel appealed to me so much is because of the connection I share with the character Tom. My life has also played out, in large part alongside the marshes and coastline of my beloved state of Maine. He says, "To describe our growing up in the low country of South Carolina, I would have to take you to the marsh on a spring day, flush the great blue heron from its silent occupation, scatter marsh hens as we sink to our knees in mud, open you an oyster from a pocket knife and feed it to you from the shell and say, there, that taste, that's the taste of my childhood. I would say, breathe deeply, and you would breathe and remember that smell for the rest of your life. He concludes with the statement, my soul grazes like a lamb on the beauty of indrawn tides. These statements fill me with a familiar truth and contentment that I have never felt from a book.